Hello and welcome to the next in the series presented by the Workplace Relations team. This webinar is Managing Unsatisfactory Performance, or I Think We Need to Talk. My name is Ian Naylor and I have worked in both government departments and not-for-profit organisations, and I bring a wealth of experience to the role. What is unsatisfactory work performance? If we look at the definition provided by the Department of Employment, Small Business and Training, unsatisfactory work performance, it can include the inability or unwillingness to utilise relevant skills to carry out tasks or major accountabilities associated with the employee's particular position in a manner that meets the reasonable expectations service. Can I just ask people to mute their microphones if you wouldn't mind, please? Unsatisfactory performance may be attributable to the lack of appropriate skills, experience or incomplete knowledge. Sometimes there may be an illness or an injury, unscheduled ongoing absenteeism, or just simply a lack of commitment. The objective of managing unsatisfactory performance process is to correct or to improve unsatisfactory performance where possible. As you can see, that is a fairly complex definition. However, the Australian Government, Australian Public Service Commission has perhaps a simpler and an alternative definition. Performance management is a process, for employees to receive sufficient feedback to maintain or improve. So it's about maintaining and improving their performance and aligning the work to the broader organisational goals. It's not just dealing with poor performance, but also encouraging and enabling success, providing employees with a sense of organisational purpose, role clarity, and managing skills to the required work. So as you see, there are a number of elements to this definition. So it's a process, it's about maintaining and improving, aligning the work of the employee to the broader organisational goals. It's about enabling success. It's about looking at the role clarity and matching the skills to the work required. There are a number of elements in relation to managing unsatisfactory performance. And this slide can represent, in very simple terms, those elements which might have an impact on managing unsatisfactory performance. So it can be such things as personal circumstances or sickness. It can be misconduct. It can be output measures and targets. It can be the job design itself, which generally leads to work attitude, capabilities, and capacity and behaviour. So as an employer, what are the most important things that you should do in relation to managing unsatisfactory workplace performance? This webinar will look at a number of things that the employer should do in managing that process. I would just invite you for a moment just to consider those things that the employer might do before I move forward. The topics that I'm going to cover today are represented by this slide. So first of all, we will be looking at the definition of unsatisfactory performance. Then we'll move to why managing unsatisfactory workplace performance is important. The reasons for unsatisfactory workplace performance, moving through the steps in addressing this underperformance, looking at monitoring and reviewing, finally a way forward, and at the end, looking at some take-home messages. So again, definition, why it's important, the reasons for unsatisfactory workplace performance, the steps in addressing, monitor and review, way forward, and take-home messages. So why does managing unsatisfactory performance matter? So basically, positive working relationships are built on communication and trust. So here, it's built on communication and trust. Regular conversations with employees about their role, capabilities, and how work is undertaken will enhance encouragement and productivity. So here, it's about regular conversations with the employees. So through these regular conversations, it will enhance encouragement and productivity. Conversely, often poor performance management can be a result of a lack of regular feedback or not having formal processes to deal with such matters. It is also important to understand that not understanding the underlying issues can have some negative impacts. And these negative impacts can basically result in breakdown in relationships, sometimes mental harm, and potential work cover claims. Sometimes unsatisfactory performance can result in persons being unwell, and they may be in fact dealing with significant personal issues. The first thing a manager should do is to try to understand the reason for poor or unusual performance and how they can support the employee, including supporting them through performing their work. This last point is important. Sometimes as a manager, we might see an employee who is normally performing well suddenly and for unexplained reasons not perform well. This should be a trigger to ask what is happening, and that should be a question, why? With managing unsatisfactory workplace performance, it can be, and often is, a complex matter. The things that will have an impact are role uncertainty and a lack of role clarity. The next contributing factor can be a lack of knowledge or skills or training or a lack of equipment. The employee sometimes is unsure if they are meeting requirements, basically because they have not been told. Here, the employee may be suffering from low personal motivation or confidence. The employee may be dealing with personal issues. The employee may be suffering from low morale. There may be poor work environment. The employee may be dealing with interpersonal difficulties. Sometimes it can involve workplace conflict, including cultural misunderstandings, and sometimes workplace bullying can be a direct contributor in relation to workplace unsatisfactory performance. So as the employer, as you speak with your staff, some or most or many of these points may come up in the course of your conversation. So the most frequent of these will be role uncertainty or lack of role clarity, lack of knowledge and skills and training, and often the interpersonal difficulties could well be a major contributing factor. As you see, there are many contributing factors which may contribute to unsatisfactory working performance. So, as an employer, you should really look beyond the obvious. So, implementing a performance system. So, a performance system, it provides a system for employers and managers with a framework for goal setting. It's about providing constructive feedback, continuous skill development, and regular discussions about performance. And this might help reduce the chance of underperformance occurring. So again, the key issues here in a performance system, it's a framework for goal setting. It provides constructive feedback, continuous skill development, and again, regular discussion. Regular discussion. So to implement best practice, you might consider expectations of both the employer and the employee, feedback, again, from both the employer and the employee, template arrangements, training, again, from both the employer and the employee, discussions, again, taking place on a regular basis between the employee and the employer, and review and reward. You will see that the constant and consistent element here is regular discussion. Addressing underperformance. So this step, or these steps, are absolutely crucial in terms of your preparation before you speak to the employee. So what I'm about to present to you is a step-by-step guide for addressing underperformance. Address underperformance straight away. I cannot stress this more importantly, to address underperformance straight away. Unfortunately and sadly, sometimes underperformance is not addressed straight away. And often it is not addressed at all, or if it is, it might be addressed once a year. So if you see performance that is not satisfactory, address it straight away. Step 1, identify the problem. Write down examples of behaviour or action causing an issue. When it is occurring, why it is an issue, and specify how the issue needs to change or improve. So again, the examples become important when you speak to the employee. When it is occurring, that is also going to be useful in terms of, are there elements there in terms of peak times, why it is an issue, and specify the issues that need to change or improve. These things should target the conversation when you move to your discussions with the employee. Step 2, assess and analyse. Once you have gone through step 1, you should then consider how serious is the problem. The second point is, how long has the problem existed? And the gap between what is expected and what is being delivered. So again, this is a preparation that an employer, the manager or supervisor should undertake in preparation for the discussion with the employee. Again, how serious is the problem? How long has the problem existed? And the gap between what is expected and what is being delivered. Having prepared to meet with the employee, step 3 is important. Meeting the employee. So during the meeting, you should clearly describe the problem and refer to specific examples. The use of the written examples collected earlier will be of enormous assistance. And once the employee has and can see the examples, it will be of great assistance. Explain the impact on the business, the employee, and the co-workers. Sometimes the employee does not understand the impact of what is happening. Explain the desired outcomes of the meeting. Give the opportunity to the employee to respond, and allow the employee to offer their view of the situation. Here, the employee might offer such things as we covered earlier, the personal issues, the lack of training, the problems in the workplace, or simply not understanding the role. I cannot stress enough the importance of listening and asking questions to better understand the problem and why the problems are occurring. If possible, refer to recent positive things that the employee has done and recognise and appreciate those things. Use relaxed and encouraging tone and show confidence in employees' ability to improve. So just to recap, describe the problem. Refer to specific examples. Explain the impact. Describe the desired outcome. Give the employee the opportunity to respond and to offer their view of the situation. Listen and ask questions to understand the response, to understand the problem and why it's occurring. Refer to positive things that the employee has done and recognise and appreciate those things that the employee has done. By using a relaxed and encouraging tone, it shows that you have confidence in the employee's ability to improve. Having met with the employee and spoken about and shown the examples, step 4 is equally as important as everything else. Here, it is critical that you make sure that the employee understands that change is required and what specific change you are seeking for the employee to make. Explore ideas by asking open questions. What can we do to improve the future? What can we do to improve the future? By asking questions of this kind, it demonstrates a partnership. And with the employee having ownership, you will achieve better results. Suggest ways to fix the problem and invite the employee to make suggestions. Offer appropriate support and assistance, such as training or adjustments to the employee's duties. Again, reinforce the value of the employee on a personal level and the role the employee performs. Again, in summary, agreeing on a solution. So when we're developing a solution, you should ensure that the employee understands what change is required and that change is required. Ask open-ended questions such as, what can we do to improve the future? That the employee and the employer are working together to make the situation better. Suggest ways to fix the problem and invite the employee to make suggestions. Offer appropriate support and assistance. And finally, reinforce the value of the employee at both a personal level and the role that the employee performs. The next step to agreeing on a solution is what this solution should look like. The agreement should be in writing and should clearly identify the performance and the behaviour that needs to change. Outline in an agreed plan how this will be done and the support for the employee to improve. Explain each party's responsibilities. Give the employee reasonable time to improve their performance. Set up a follow-up meeting and a date to review against the agreed plan. However, in cases of serious and ongoing underperformance, specify and preferably in writing the possible consequences If the employee's performance does not improve, both the employer and the employee should keep a copy of the plan and the agreement. So again, in summary, clearly identify the performance and behaviour that needs to change in the written plan. The level of support that will be provided, explain each party's responsibilities. It is critical that the employee be given reasonable time to improve their performance. Set up a follow-up meeting to review the actual performance against the agreed plan. Where the performance and the underperformance is not meeting expectations, it is critical that the plan provides consequences in writing if the underperformance continues, and that both the employer and the employee should keep a copy of the written agreement. Monitor and review. Once you have established the written plan, you should follow through with any training or support offered as the employer. Regularly check in with the employee and check the progress. This should be done on an informal basis. Continue giving feedback and encouragement, and have a follow-up meeting at agreed time and review progress. This would be a formal part of the process. So you see that there are both informal and formal parts to monitoring and review. Again, it's about giving feedback and encouragement. The way forward. If the performance has improved to a satisfactory level, acknowledgement that the issue has been resolved and discuss how the improvements will be maintained. I would suggest at this stage that the employer write to the employee to confirm that at this stage, the managing unsatisfactory performance has come to an end, but that regular reviews will be undertaken to ensure that these improvements are maintained. And again, this can be done through both a combination of formal and informal processes. However, if the employee's performance does not improve after a reasonable period, you need to consider your options. Again, you would have the conversation with the employee to try to understand what is going on. It may be a case of revisiting some of those things that we discussed earlier around role clarification, personal issues, or one of the many things that was in the early part of this webinar. In some cases, it may be appropriate to continue the performance management by extending the written plan. In this case, it may also be necessary to issue a formal written warning. However, if the employee is still underperforming after a reasonable period, it might be appropriate to dismiss the employee. This is a serious step, and you need to have a process to manage that step. Dismissing an employee for underperformance. Before dismissing an employee for underperformance, It is important to show that you have 1. Told them the purpose of a performance meeting in advance and allowed them to prepare. Told them they can have a support person present. However, this support person cannot participate in the meeting, nor can the support person advocate on behalf of the employee. Again, before dismissing the employee, you must have clearly outlined the expected level of performance and the improvement required and the time horizon for that. You must have clearly warned them in writing that their performance need to improve. Give them adequate time and support to improve their performance. Told them in writing that they may be dismissed if their performance did not improve. Again, to recap, before dismissing an employee, it's important to show you have told them the purpose of the performance meetings in advance and allowed them to prepare. Told them they can have a support person present. Clearly outline the expected level of performance and improvement required. Warn them that their performance need to improve. Given them time and support to improve their performance. And told them and warned them that they may be dismissed if their performance did not improve. However, I cannot stress enough that a failure to follow these steps before dismissing an employee may result in a successful unfair dismissal claim or general protection claim against you. Take-home messages. Employers are entitled to expect high standards of performance from employees and can take reasonable management action to address underperformance, and sometimes employees perceive this as bullying. If you take reasonable actions in a reasonable manner and within a reasonable time frame, this is not bullying. Taking a best practiced approach to manage underperformance and dealing with problems appropriately, sensitively, and promptly will minimize your risk of a bullying claim. Again, to recap, employers are entitled to expect high standards of performance from employees and can take reasonable management action. To address underperformance, and sometimes employees perceive this as bullying. If you take reasonable actions in a reasonable manner and within a reasonable time, this is not bullying. Taking a best practice approach to underperformance and dealing with problems appropriately, sensitively, and promptly will help minimize the risk of a bullying claim. Remember, it is likely to be more cost-effective and efficient to work on improving an employee's performance than it is to replace them. I have now come to the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, I would invite you to send an email to the address shown on the screen. I hope that this webinar has been of interest and useful. And again, if you have any questions, please forward them to the email address appearing on the screen. And this webinar has been recorded and will be available through the MTAQ portal. And again, I thank you for participating in this webinar, which is part of our series. Thank you and good afternoon.